Hello everyone. Hi, thanks for coming out tonight. I'm Justin Waldman, he, him. I'm the artistic director here at Two River Theater. Welcome to tonight's In the Know for VOS by Cristina Pumariega with our amazing guest, the director of the show, Nicole A. Watson.
Thank you.
Yay!
Thanks.
I just want to first shout out this setup, and this is awesome. We dialed up a really nice view for everybody today.
Yeah.
So use what we've been given. So this is great. This is really fun. I kind of love it. As traditionally, I'm going to talk a little bit about Nicole's background. We're going to ask some questions and open up to y'all before we get going. So Nicole Watson is the producing artistic director of Playwright Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That is her day job. So she is moonlighting with us on her
off hours.
Yeah, off hours. She's a gig worker in the gig economy. But the Playwright Center in Minneapolis is one of the most influential and important new play development epicenters in the United States. And she is the leader of this incredible organization. So we are beyond thrilled that she would take some time off of her day job to come play with us. Prior to the post in Minneapolis, she was the associate artistic director at the McCarter Theater Center in Princeton, New Jersey, down the road, after holding the same position at the Roundhouse Theater outside of DC for 2.5 years. So I always think it's awesome when you have other directors in the building that are artistic leaders, because they know the deal, which is really fun. So you can have both conversations about the piece and also how to produce it, which is really fun.
Yeah.
She is a director and an educator with an interest in new play development and plays that deal with the past, which we'll talk about later. She was a former history teacher. She has directed in New York City, as well as universities and theaters across the United States, including Berkeley Rep, the McCarter, the Guthrie Theater, Roundhouse Theater, Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park, the Kennedy Center, and Oslo Repertory Theater, among many others. She's produced the Adrienne Kennedy Festival, which is super cool. It was a celebration of Miss Kennedy's work, where she directed a digital version of Kennedy's She Brought Her Heart Back in a Box. And at the McCarter, she proposed and launched the Toni Morrison Commissions, which supported artists as they created new work informed by the time spent with the Morrison Archives, which are located at Princeton University, which is really cool. She is a member of New George's Jam, and has worked with New Dramatists, the Lark Play Development Center, Fire This Time Festival, I don't know that one actually, the New Black Festival, Women's Project, the 52nd Street Project, which is so dear to my heart, New York Theater Workshop, Signature Theater, and the Working Theater. She is alumni of both the Lincoln Center Directors Lab, the Women's Project Directors Lab,
I should have edited this
and a member of SDC. No, I love embarrassing people. This is amazing. The thing that's so great about being able to talk about what amazing people that work here is this is a lifetime. And it's such an amazing thing. And it really is impressive, I think, to see how somebody has done so many things in their career, but then they're sitting here with us making art here in Red Bank, New Jersey. So this is someone who has done incredible things all over the country, and I love embarrassing people. So forgive me.
No.
Everybody, Nicole Watson.
Thank you.
Sorry, I got to do it.
No.
It gives me joy.
Yeah.
It really does.
Okay.
So I love that you were a history teacher.
Yeah.
All right, how did you go from being a history teacher to where you are now and working in new play development?
Sure. So I first of all, thank you for having me. I always knew I wanted to be in theater, and I was a history major at Yale, and I graduated and I interned at the 52nd Street Project. And I spent a summer working with young people in Hell's Kitchen, and the executive director there said, "You need a day job. You need a job." I didn't know what I was doing. I'm from Jamaica. I'm the oldest, first person to pursue all of this. And she knew someone at the Cathedral School. If you're familiar with New York City, the Cathedral of St. John the Divine at West 110th in Amsterdam has a tiny Episcopal K-8 school in the back. And they needed someone to work in the admissions office and do data entry. And I was like, I can do that. And we interviewed, and they said, great, you can do data entry. And on the first day of school, the history teacher quit. And on the second day of school, the headmaster tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hi, we need a 6th grade history teacher. I see that you have a degree in history from Yale, and you like kids and theater, and our 6th grade history teacher has to do their play. what do you think? And I said, I think I'm not certified to teach. I just got out of college. And he said, we're a private school. And then I started learning the difference between public school education and private school education. And so overnight, my mom was a public school librarian at a special ed school for many, many years, and I had kids. And overnight, I took home this one sheet, I took home this textbook, and I showed up and I did a demo lesson, and they gave me the 6th grade teaching job. And that's how it started. And so it was a part-time job. I ended up subbing at the school. So in my first year out of college, I was a 6th grade history teacher. I wrote and directed a play for them. I also worked in the admissions office. I became the in-house sub. So I would show up sometimes and they'd say, the kindergarten teacher's gone. And I would teach kindergarten until it was time to teach 6th grade. And then I was so naive, like, I was just naive. I was foolish and naive and wanted to be in New York and wanted to be in the arts, and it was a job. But I fell in love with teaching.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it didn't have a chance to be scared about doing it. You just jumped in and did it.
I didn't. And for me, thinking of who I was when I finished school, that is the best thing that could have happened to me, like not having the chance to prepare for it, but to sort of dive right in. And these kids were amazing, and I wrote this play for them. And then, at the end of the year, they didn't have a full-time job for me. And so I went to another school in the Bronx. It was another private school that needed a history teacher, taught high school. And then I was like, I'm not getting to my auditions. I want to be an actor. And I was going to auditions on the weekends, and then they'd say, oh, you have a callback. It's Tuesday at 10. And I would be like, oh, well, I have class. I can't go. So I was like, I'm going to retire. I need to pursue my dreams. And then my 6th graders, the cathedral school called me and said, hey, your 6th graders are now 8th graders, and they have to do their school musical, and the music teacher's on maternity leave. What do you say about coming back? So I did the Fantastics. And so when I look back, one of the first things I did was I directed. But it took me 10 years before I decided it's what I really wanted to do.
Oh my God. Well, so you were like slipping things into drinks at the charter school.
It was just, and I loved teaching. I fell in love with it. And then, was still, working with children. I always say in my directing career, I aged up. I started directing 6th graders, then 8th graders, then high school students, then college students, and then finally adults. You mentioned that you were acting as well. So like what in that you knew you wanted to get into theater before you taught. So like where'd you catch the acting bug, the theater bug, and like what's your journey in theater? Yeah, so in school, as a kid, I was in the theater club, and I was also a musician. I played bass clarinet and alto and tenor sax. So I was a music and theater kid all through high school, and in college I continued with music. And again, as being the oldest of immigrants, my parents were like, please think about law and medicine. And so I would do theater in the summer, and my plan was that I was going to do something practical, like major in history, and then when I graduated, I would go to New York and be an actor. So I was always interested in acting, and then teaching showed up, and I call being Miss Watson one of the best performances of my life. And at some point realized that directing was the thing I was more interested in. I realized I did not have, I watch actors now and I'm like, yeah, I could never have done that. I just could never have done that.
Same. Yeah, back in the day, it was like, yes, no, not happening. Yeah. So what sparked your deep passion for new plays? Like your career has been new plays and new plays and new plays in an incredible way. Like what made new writing your passion? Yeah,
part of it is that's how I became a director. I don't have an MFA in directing. I have a graduate degree in sort of interdisciplinary studies, but I didn't go to grad school for directing. I assisted some amazing people. Andre DeShields was one of the first people I assisted. I worked a lot with Ruben Santiago Hudson, but I'm a new play person because it is playwrights who gave me their plays to do. So when I wanted to be a director and I was going to see readings in the city and I was going to theaters and seeing shows, it was the introductions that people were making to playwrights and saying, oh, she's a director. And they'd go, you're a director? And I would say, yes, even though it wasn't true. And it was because playwrights gave me their work.
Yeah.
You know, I had no background in like, I'm going to work on Chekhov, or I'm going to work on Shakespeare, or I'm going to do this other play. My whole career has been playwrights giving me their work to do.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's a thing that happens after the show or in the bar or at the dinner.
Yeah.
You know, it's an amazing, but now you are arguably one of the most influential curators of new play development in this country. That is not hyperbole in the least. Can you tell us a little bit about your day job and what you do at Playwright Center?
Sure. So Playwright Center is an artist service organization located in Minneapolis. We're actually getting a new building in St. Paul in the fall. And I say we're an artist service organization because we manage about 9 different fellowships, the Jeromes, the McKnights, the Venturous Fellowship. And we support yearly about 47 playwrights. And we also have a robust education program, and we don't produce. So unlike you, which you have to budget a season and you're going to do the full production, my job is to support an artist on whatever journey they want, whatever play they want to write. We try and create the resources for them to workshop that play. It's really interesting. We workshop about 60 plays a year. Most of them happen behind closed doors because playwrights are in such early phases of their work. So we only do about 10 to 12 public readings a year. And so it's a really interesting thing because so much of our work sort of happens in private. And that is what the playwrights need. And so it's amazing when you go and see where the plays end up. We just had a show at Intar that premiered, and we workshopped it in the fall. You know, like every month there are a number of plays around the country that were developed at the Playwright Center, but we don't end up producing them. And again, what's interesting, as the artistic director at the Playwright Center, I don't select the playwrights and I don't select the plays, because the playwrights, again, because we run these fellowships, the Jerome Fellowship, the McKnight Fellowship, our core apprentice program, those are selected by panels of other artists. So my job really is, I call it like I surrender, you know, like the panel meets, I listen in, they say these 3 people we want to be the fellows, or 2 people, or however many, and we call them and offer them a fellowship, and they say yes, and then they show up and I say, okay, what are you going to do? and so I don't pick the plays and I don't pick the people, and it's really about, again, we say we're a human-centered organization. We are an artist service organization, and so it is from that deep support that we give that I think it allows us to send plays off to you and other organizations.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a published version of a play or a playbill of a play, if now that you've heard this, you'll notice that at the bottom of the page, the title page, it'll say like develop at the Playwright Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and you will see this a lot if you start looking for it. It's one of those things that it's all over the place because the amount of volume that they're working on, it's really, really impressive.
Yeah.
So like what excites you about a new play? Like when someone picks it for you and then you have to service it, like what gets you excited about one?
I mean, it's terrifying, you know, you'll sort of read it and you're like, okay, this is really interesting or great, whatever the feelings are, but you are figuring out what it's going to be, and you have nobody else. You can talk to the playwright, but you and your design team and your actors, you are making something, not from nothing, but there are no other production photos to look at. There's no other director I can call and go, how did you stage that moment? What did you do there? What did that mean? And so I just find it really exciting and terrifying all at the same time. And I think it's just such a great ride to say, like, what is possible here? What are you trying to do? What is the story you want to tell? What might that look like? And then in like really granular technical things, it's like, you know, like you're like, okay, playwright, this character has the last line of this scene and the first line of the next scene, and you want them to be 20 years older and bald instantly. Okay. How will we do that? You know? And so like, I just really also enjoy that like conversation of like, here's what you wrote. These are the things we could do to make it possible, but what is more important to you? You know, a full gesture of 30 years older and bald, or some other thing, because, you know, so many of our great playwrights also write for TV and film, and I deeply see the intrusion of TV and film into our plays, for better or for worse. But part of it, especially when film and TV intrudes into plays, I have to remind playwrights that a play is a real-time, uninterrupted event. A real-time, uninterrupted, live event. And our job is to craft that, and we're always sort of fighting time in a way with what is possible and how many things you can do. And honestly, truly, I just love it. I'm married to a playwright. I mean, this is how much I like plays. I really love the conversations when you get a great design team, the research part of it. I have learned more about different parts of the world and different artists, visual artists, musicians, through research that people do to help tell the story of the play we're going to do. And my life continues to be enriched by choosing to work on these plays.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I love that you talk about the costume change problem, right? Because it always...
No playwright will think about that.
I know.
And they're not supposed to.
But there's such a rich history of it. It's the Touchstone problem. Yeah. I love telling this story. Is it As You Like It, when Touchstone has this gobbledygook monologue at the end of the show that everybody wants to cut, but you realize it's there because Rosalind has to change from a boy to a girl. So she has to go put on a dress, and someone has to vamp for about 45 seconds. So you have this gobbledygook monologue, and you're like, why? Because she's changing. So you have to put on the bald pate and become 30 years older.
Yeah. It's a real thing. And I would also say, playwrights don't have to solve it. That's also not their job. I mean, I also, if I see a play that has been on the page, directed within an inch of its life, I don't want to do that play. I really don't, and it's he turns his head, she sighs, they cross this way, they're wearing this, the room is that, that play is if you've figured everything out, then I don't
O'Neill.
Right. Well, yeah, he's not a new play, but maybe one day.
Well, speaking of exciting new plays, VOS.
Yes.
All right. So can you tell everybody a little bit what it's about, and then what attracted you to come and do it?
Sure. So VOS is a two-person play with sort of four intersecting stories. It's set in Argentina in 1975-76, right before a military coup, which I said in rehearsal, and I'll continue to say, started in 1976, right around this time. So this play is being made on top of very real history. March 24th, which was our last week of rehearsal, was Remembrance Day. It was the day this coup started. So we're sort of making a play in sort of real historical memory. So it takes place during that time, and then it also takes place between 2015 and 2016. And there's a young woman who's gone back to Argentina. Her mom was born there, left many years ago, and she's there doing sort of IVF medical tourism because, I don't know, for some women, especially in this country, the cost of insurance around having a child is so exorbitant that people, for all sorts of surgeries, will travel elsewhere for it. And throughout the play, you will see how these four women, what their relationships really are. And truly, I think it's just a beautiful play about the life force of women, through war, through wanting to be a mother, through being mothers. I think it's just sort of a phenomenal story that is trying to capture these multiple journeys in this really sort of intimate, succinct way. And that's sort of been our journey as well in the room.
And you mentioned the revolution. You mentioned that you are interested in plays that deal with the past, right? So VOS is certainly a big part of it is historical fiction, yeah. So why does the history fascinate you? And then what does having that historical hook in a play do to your practice of making theater?
Yeah, I mean, I fell in love with history when I got to college. I think if you had told my high school history teachers that I became a history teacher, they would have really been like, really? She did? And when I got to college, I just sort of was like, there's so many stories. There are just so many stories that I didn't learn, that we didn't have time to tell. There is no one version of history. That's just not possible. is just not a real thing with the amount of people that have been on the planet, with the amount of life experiences that people have had. And especially going to Yale, the sort of primary sources that I had access to, I remember, there's a rare book library there, and I had, that thin airplane paper that people used to write letters on, holding that, and it was like letters that Claude McKay was writing to James Baldwin and things like that. And when you get to work with that, when you get to see that, I think it really shifts, at least for me, it completely shifted my interest and my love of the past. And for me, I do think having a knowledge of history is important for our present and our future. I am someone who believes that. I know there are people who don't share my opinion, but I believe that it is important to know all the varieties of life that we have gone through and will continue to go through. And so when I get to do plays that sort of deal with the past, and actually I will say this is from another playwright who I love. Lloyd Suh is an amazing Chinese-American playwright, and he talked beautifully. I once got to interview him, and he talked about the fact that all plays meet in the present moment. And when you write them, even when they're set in the past, you have no idea how they're going to resonate on that particular day. And it came out of a conversation where we had done a digital production of one of his plays, and we went to watch it, maybe a month later. And I forget what had happened in the world that day, but I said, Lloyd, this part of your play, I never heard it in this way before. But because of what happened today, I felt particularly attuned to that. And Lloyd was like, right, all plays are present tense. All plays, no matter where they're set, are going to meet you right now. And I think that's the exciting thing about getting to work on history. I also say, so my graduate thesis, not to sort of belabor the point, was about the particular way in which theater gets to engage with history. So I worked at the New York Historical Society. I worked at the Museum of the City of New York. I did all these tours. I really, my other day jobs and, the classroom. And those spaces are bound by a particular necessity of truth, right? So when I worked at the New York Historical Society, I would give tours, and it was during the Slavery in New York exhibit. And, there were photos, and there would be a photo of all of these African-American Civil War soldiers, and the caption would say, anonymous, 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 anonymous. And the historical record says we don't know their name because nobody asked and nobody wrote it down, and that's done. You give that photo to a playwright, and that playwright gets to restore the very life they had because the photo exists. You get to name them, you get to breathe life into them. And so what I love about theater is it allows you, I think, to excavate the past in a very different way. The theater is a place where ghosts are visible. The theater is a place where you can imagine something differently. And I find that tremendously exciting. It's actually a play that made me realize I had to stop teaching because it tackled a subject I was teaching, and it showed in one night a thing I think I was trying to do in my classroom. And I was like, oh, there it is. You did that in one night. You told all those stories in one night. You can show points of view in one, I don't have to talk about this group thought this, and this group thought this, and that group wanted that. You put them in the conversation. And then we all get to be invited into that event and that sort of discussion. And so I find that really fascinating and important.
That's amazing. I love the way that you explain that. That's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. No I'm going to change course just a smidge.
A little more about VOS and Christina?
So if in case you don't know, there are two actors in this play. One of them is also the playwright. Yes. So how do you know who you're talking to when you're in rehearsal? How do you keep that straight? Does she wear a different hat when you talk to the playwright Christina or actress Christina? Yeah. How do you manage that as a director in the room?
Well, it's interesting because the room started calling her, how many people here have watched Ghostbusters? Okay, great. We did Dana versus Zool. Like that's what happened in the room. Like,
which one was which?
I know Dana was, I think, the actor, and Zool was the playwright.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
And I forget, it's probably Al, the other actress, who made that up. But it's interesting. The other day, I met Christina after previews, and I said, "I'm only giving you acting notes today. I'm only talking to the actor today," and it is a bit of a challenge. I think one of the most interesting moments for us is it's harder to let go of the playwriting hat, I think, in this go round. And there were moments where I was like, Christina, the actor has to get ready to do this show, and no amount of rewrite is going to shift that journey. So there really was a kind of like, please don't worry about whether you think the scene works or not. Like, we got to do it. We got to do it. Like that was a lot of my, like, as we were going, we got to do it. But it was great fun. I've known Christina for years, and have always been a fan of
Sorry, I should have interjected. Sorry to interrupt. But this is also her debut as a playwright.
Yes.
So this is the first play she's ever had produced.
Yes.
And she's in it.
Yes.
So keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've known Christina for years as an actor and have been totally enamored with her. And if I'm being totally honest, I know when you emailed me, it was like right before I was supposed to start my job at Playwright Center. I think it was like April 1st was my 1-year anniversary of having that job. I'm finally in year 2. But I got this email. I've also always wanted to come back to Two River. I did Little Shakes several years ago, and have come here to see a lot of plays. I'm good friends with Brendan and Crystal, so I've seen so many plays out here when I lived on the East Coast. And so I was thrilled to get your email and was completely prepared to say, "Oh, thank you so much. Please call me in the future. I'm moving to Minnesota." And then we got on the phone and you said, "Well, it's a play by Christina Pumariega." And I thought, oh, I'm probably going to have to do that. And then I read it, and I called Christina, and I said, well, here are my thoughts about it, and I'm starting a new job, so I don't know. And luckily, you all had a little bit of patience, too, so I could figure it out.
Yeah.
But
worth it.
Yeah.
Well worth it.
Thank you. Thank you.
But yeah, it's that amazing thing. Like those are those kismet moments of like, I'm not, except for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's meant to be.
Yeah, and we did get to, we also got to workshop the play in August at the Ojai Playwrights Conference. So she and I and a dramaturg and another actor on the West Coast, we got about 2 weeks together in August to sort of look at the play and sort of start there with some of the notes and thoughts we had, so that coming in for this rehearsal, it wasn't completely new to me. I had already started percolating on some of these things.
In that process, because that's really great, because if for those of you who may have come to our Crossing Borders reading, like VOS was in Crossing Borders 2 years ago, and then after that we programmed the show, and now they had another workshop of 2 weeks, so it's had time to percolate. Like what changes have happened through the show? Like what is the development process like? Working through it as someone who centers and curates development processes, like what is the kind of thing that you were wanting to do with the piece, and how did you bring it from A to B to Z?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the more I do this, the more I think about like what is a script workshop versus what is like a production development workshop, and they're not entirely the same thing. And what I mean is like your playwright is always trying to refine the script and the story. My job, particularly in this play, was sort of like having these moments. In one of the original scripts, there was sort of like a lot of like phone calls, and I sort of was like, so Christina, what are we looking at? And I got that from a lighting designer, of course, a really fabulous lighting designer who I work with all the time, who every once in a while would go, what are we looking at? Of course, because she needs to light something. And so I borrowed that from her. And so a number of conversations, the way scenes were written, I sort of was like, Christina, what are we supposed to be looking at here in this conversation on the phone? What's happening on stage? And so that sort of helped some of the rewrites. And then the other thing we really talked about was sort of stage picture, because I'll say there was one scene that was originally set in a woman's bathroom. And I sort of was like, I have questions about like the duration of this scene and what we're gonna do in the bathroom and why they're there, but I'll wait. And I remember the dramaturg was like, good luck changing that scene. And we finally got into rehearsal, and I sort of was like, Christina, I don't know why we're in the bathroom. Like, and if you're trying to do this, right? This is why I like talking to playwrights. Like, the playwright will be like, well, here's what I'm trying to do. And now that I will say I'm older and wiser, I now can say, well, if you're trying to do that, may I make a proposal? And so the scene is now in an office, and there are so many things that just feel more interesting and playable because we weren't trying to be in the ladies' room for the number of pages that were there, you know. And also, I think, so I got to go to Bulgaria a couple years ago with a group of directors. And in Bulgaria, I will return to this. In Bulgaria, plays run for years, right? So you totally see why it's like a director-driven scene, right? The director's like, this is my play, I cut it, I don't care what you think, I'm just gonna, you know, and it just like the plays run for years. Here in the US, as a director, I'm like, I'm trying to do proof of concept. Like, I'm trying to show whoever, you, and whoever else comes to see the play, that the play works, that the story is there in the hopes that someone else will do the next production. And so in being responsible for sort of proof of concept, it's also a really big designer conversation. And like, which direction will we go in? Because first of all, I think if you're going to do plays, you have to be a careful reader. That is where my history degree comes in. You have to be a very close reader and a very careful reader. And a lot of the conversation was like, Christina was like, well, I want this and I want this. And at some point you're like, well, which one is it? Like, which road will we go down for this play? The road of this or the road of that? Because we actually maybe can't do all the things. And so I think that's a really challenging and exciting thing, because you have to make the choices. You don't know if they're the right choices, but you do have to make them, and then you have to refine them, and then you like, you hope and you pray and you work and hope that those choices really sort of play out and help it make the story come alive.
Yeah, and I love that you talk about it through the lens of like working with your creative team, because like those design choices are plot points too, right? Those things help tell the story and clarify and ground you in one place or another. And you have a lot of technical elements in the show. There's a lot of projections in the show, which is really fun. You'll get to see some really cool, amazing stuff from Kelly Colburn, which is so cool. Can you talk a little bit about like how do you use all those theatrical conventions in the show?
Yeah, you know, this is a design team, some of whom I've worked with before, some of whom are new to me, and they're a fabulous team. And I will say they're also like new play designers. And what I mean by that is like, we spent a lot of time talking through the script, and we sort of spent a lot of time going, well, which direction? And then we would ask Christina, like, which choice feels more important to you? And how do we want to capture this? And what can't we do? You know, and so we've really tried, I mean, with the projections, with the camera, with the design, to sort of make, to create a canvas where these two women can really sort of shape the story and move, and to sort of create the ability both for things to be hidden and for things to be revealed. And I mean, it's very exciting, but you know, it's also like, again, there were moments where I would look at Christina and go, okay, I think, like, I remember one of our first conversations where she was like, I really just want the play to move like as fast as possible, which is fabulous. And I also had to say, Christina, there are no jump cuts on stage. The jump cut is a film gesture. Like, there's no like cut away to me and then back to, you know? And so again, that was one of the other conversations of like, this is real time. How are you? Because each actor is playing two characters. So I will also say that like the costume designer, right? Trying to make very purposeful, intentional choices that as fast as possible, right? Which still, like, there are days where like the sound designer is like, do we think it will get any faster? And I'm like, I don't know that it will. This is a person who is like running backstage to change their shirt. You know, this is real. This is happening in real time. Very precise choices on how to do this time period and that time period as fast as we can. And so that has been a really exciting journey. And then like the scenic design was like, what's the gesture? What's the canvas that we can sort of put both worlds on and sort of evoke all these different sort of locations and ideas that Christina is dealing with. So it feels like a little bit like a feat, you know, and you're like, you know, even today we watched the matinee and we're like, oh, that seems like a vocabulary we've created. I don't know if we've used it enough, you know, because it's also like you discover what you did only after you've gotten to watch the play a few times, where you're like, oh, we made that choice there and there. We didn't make it over there. Should we put that choice over there too? Oh, maybe. Do we have time to put that choice over there?
It's a great thing about previews.
Yeah, yeah. So it's, I mean, I find it, I mean, it's a lot of work, but I find it delightful. And I just find when you get to be in a room full of people who are really invested, it's why I'm a theater person. I really just enjoy it so much. And, you know, I certainly didn't know a lot about the Dirty War when I started this play. And I have learned. I still have a lot to learn, but I feel really grateful that now that's a part of a history that I am now more attuned to. And our costume designer is Brazilian, and her parents, it was a different war, but her parents fled, and she felt so personally drawn to this story. And everyone sort of had a sort of really profound reason why they wanted to do the play. And I think that's the other thing that I really love, is that when you hear artists say, like, I'm excited to do this play for this reason, and here's how I want to help support this story. And then you all sort of gather all the ideas and see what works.
Yeah, it's great. It's fabulous. And to help with those jump cuts, we do truck Touchstone out to do Must Virtue and If.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. You're welcome.
Great.
Let me open it up to some questions from y'all. Yes, sir.
You talked about how the play evolves as it is produced again and again with each director's input to the playwright.
Yeah.
So clearly the playwright is the vessel for moving it to the next one. Is it ever happened that the next director comes and talks to you as a director and says, what was the challenge? And there's not necessarily through the playwright as an intermediate. I assume they still would consult with the playwright, but do you have a way, in other words, of talking to the next director and passing that on? Are they asking back to you?
Sometimes people do, and I've certainly asked other directors if I'm doing a show. Like I did Skeleton Crew, and there's a card game in Skeleton Crew, and I don't play cards, and I remember calling both the playwright and another director and an actor going, what card game is this? How do you play it? Can someone tell? Like, it's those little things sometimes that you're like, I don't have like, and you can't Google what is the card game in Skeleton Crew, you know, like somebody needs to know. And so sometimes people do, you know. I think the biggest thing is like, if they call it, it's more, you know, questions about the play potentially, or how did you solve something. The playwright or another theater or their agent will help drive the second production. And yeah, I mean, I think it's like, I like talking to people about the plays, and I've definitely had people reach out to me and say, how did you solve this? Why did you make that choice? And I will tell them, you know. I don't know if that completely answers your question. I've also been in a situation where I've called other directors and said, okay, I'm thinking about this moment, and I saw your photo. I saw your production photo or something. Can I ask you about it? Also, at the same time, I think most directors want to figure things out for themselves, so I certainly don't get as many calls about as I think sometimes designers do. Like when I talk to the designers, it feels like they, more often than not, get the call.
Here's a great example of like a piece of information that is passed around. So like if you all saw Dial M for Murder, like that stabbing thing of how someone was stabbed in the back with scissors, like the props departments and lots of theaters that have all done it have called each other. How'd you do it? What'd you do? So there's a couple versions of that prop that people have helped each other, you know, source or build. So it's like here's the question that the playwright has posed. Here are some solutions that were actionable.
That doesn't necessarily have to go through the playwright. That could be
No.
prop person to prop person.
Yeah, the theater will say, who did it?
Right.
If you did it, can you give me a call? Kind of thing. So it's kind of neat in that way.
Yeah.
This is the beauty of theater to me, is that it does evolve that way. You can watch Dial M or Murder, the movie again and again and again, and it is always the same. And one of the beauty of live theater is each director does get to change things as they go, and it's fascinating to me how that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. That's why we do it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any other questions? We answered everything.
That's right.
I love it. Well, fantastic. Who's seeing the show tonight? Anybody? All right. Well, let's get you out of here to go see the show. You got to get down into the other side of the building. I want to thank Nicole Watson
Thank
for her
you.
amazing answers and her brilliant mind.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you all for coming out to
there's
us.
a
Yes,
hand
sir. Yeah.
When you were talking about the toilet seat,
Yes.
I was wondering how you would have handled the flush. when you're in a toilet,
Yeah.
you do business.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, this is like one of the interesting things when, especially I think for the sound designer in talking about the play is like, there was always this conversation with Christina of like, do you want to hear everything, right? There's always like, I think this play, in order to move swiftly, right? This became the thing we said. In order to move swiftly, there's a gesture towards realism, but it's not realism and we're not being literal. Christina had a note that's like, can you do the play with 2 chairs and a table? I think we kind of mostly did that, but we needed some other things. For the toilet flush, the sound designer was like, will I have to do a toilet flush sound cue? And I was like, you might, let's see. And we actually had one in for another scene, and my sound designer was like, can we please take that out? Because it didn't help the storytelling,
Yeah.
and I sort of was like, I would be fine, but you have to check with the playwright. And he went over and he was like, Christina. I think they had a little conversation about it. Because what's interesting is, and let me answer the question more fully. Here's the thing that's, I think, really exciting about any playwright. Especially, as you pointed out, Christina is like a seasoned veteran actor and a new playwright. And so in talking to Christina will be like, well, here's what I wanted. So like for her, she was like, well, I wanted it in the bathroom because I don't think, and there's actually a video you'll see in the play of her in the ladies' room doing one of her IVF injections. And for her, it was like, I want people to know what women go through to do this. And it's not always at the doctor's office, and it's not always pretty. And sometimes you're out on the street and the alarm goes off and you just have to take care of it because there's time, and the desire to have that kid takes over everything. And so like, that toilet flush, while I was like, Christina, please, why? And the sound designer was like, why? The reason for being in the bathroom was this very like deep, like, I just want people to know that this is like happening out of sight most of the time. And again, what theater can do is put something in front of you that maybe you don't know about. So there was so much, it's like these little things that you're like, what did you want to do behind, what was the reason for that? And I think for me, part of being a new play director and why I like it is I like asking the questions. I mean, like, what do you want out of that moment? What are you trying to do with that? I don't know if just hearing that toilet flush will tell that story, but here's another way we could do it. Again, Christina was in Argentina for quite some time, and she shared all her pictures with us. And, we had this moment we were like, you saw it all in person. I don't know how to bring Argentina into any theater. I did a play once set in the Grand Canyon, and I was like, well, our theater will never be as beautiful as the Grand Canyon. So you have to figure out how you're going to gesture towards a thing that is so epically different and specific than anything you could do on stage. So it's stuff like that. So we didn't do the toilet flush, but there is a little video that is a nod to being in the bathroom. So you'll see that. You'll see that. It's a good question.
I've done on stage where someone goes off stage and then pours water in a bucket to like make like they're in a bath, to make it sound like they're in a bathroom. So like the Foley of it.
Yeah.
It's
things
imperfect, but it works.
Yeah, the things
And then
we
do. That was fun directing.
Yeah.
That was really good stuff. That was some A+ work right there. Thank you everybody so much. It's such a pleasure to see everybody. VOS opens. It's on previews now. It runs to the end of the month. And if you're interested in more stuff at Two River, we just announced our 25-26 season today.
Season.
So check out the website. Nice to see everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Justin.